Hello and welcome to the Elder Tree podcast. My name is Twiggy Dawn. I'm the founder of the Elder Tree and Alchemilla Herbals, and I reside on Jitterbug land here in far north Queensland. You are listening to the Herbal Education segment, where each new moon I invite a myriad of plant wisdom keepers to chat about the world of herbal education, about their passions and motivations, and their dreams for the future of herbal medicine education in Australia. This podcast is brought to you by the Elder Tree, a non-for-profit organisation whose mission is putting the medicine in the hands of the people. One of the ways that we are doing this is through this podcast. If you would like to go deeper with the podcast journey while supporting the Elder Tree for as little as $2 per week, then you can become a member of our Patreon. Thanks to all of the people and plants who have helped to make this podcast possible. Today's interview is with Dawn Whitten, who is an incredible herbalist and naturopath and academic living on Bundjalung country in northern New South Wales. Dawn is one of the co-owners of Goulds pharmacy down in Lutruwita or Tasmania, having bought that amazing farm and apothecary pharmacy like about 18 years ago. And I've interviewed her father, Greg Whitten, on this show, who's my biggest herbal hero in Australia. Interviewed her partner, Jason Horolak, in the last new moon. And I was really excited to get to interview Dawn. I met her down at Marlene Herbs in Tasmania at the start of the year, and just really blown away by her amazing balance of being like a really accomplished scholar, academic. You know, she's contributed to many of the main textbooks for university, and also published, her thesis about herb-drug interactions is a really highly cited academic piece. And yeah, she's been very influential in the science world, but she's also very like hands in the earth and really knows the plants and really has that the energetic realms covered too. So I love spending time with people like this that are quite balanced in both hemispheres of the brain, and I really love her message in this episode about how tradition and science aren't as separate as what some of us might think. So we cover all kinds of topics, especially, of course, focusing on her passion for lactation support, for prenatal support, for baby and toddler support. She is very passionate in these areas, very passionate about the human microbiome, and very passionate about herbalists knowing where their medicines come from. And so it's a really great chat. And I hope that you enjoy listening to it as much as what I enjoyed having it with Dawn. Hi, Dawn. Thank you so much for joining me here on the Elder Tree podcast today. I'm just going to jump straight into the first question and ask you to share just a bit about your journey with Goulds. I know that many of our listeners have been following your incredible achievements with that space, with the clinic and the farm. And yeah, I'd just love if you could share a bit about that journey with us.
Sure. So I guess just kind of stepping back, origin kind of journey, I had Greg Whitten as my father, so I was around herbal medicine, through childhood and adolescence, and playing around with herbs, prescribing them to my friends without really knowing much what I was offering, and then went to do the Southern Cross University BNAT degree, which I was just so fortunate in the timing that I did that degree. I feel like it was just at an amazing time, because we were the fourth year coming in, and the teachers there were so inspired and committed, and we had Sue Evans and Hans Woolmuth and Stephen Myers and just a whole swag of them. They were permanent. They're always kind of discussioning and visioning together to create this incredible education, which was very much about brain stretching, being immersed in the tradition, as well as really also being connected and learning to critically appraise the contemporary evidence was coming out as well. So that being in that amazing learning environment was incredibly special. And then in the summers I would go home and spend time on the farm with my dad and just sketch the herbs and things like that. And by the time I got to clinic in that course, we were pretty excited to be in clinic. But then I went to prescribe some dried herbs, and I opened up the cupboard to look at the dried herbs, and I was like, these look terrible. And at that time, that was a time when some of the lead kind of tincture manufacturers were also selling dried herbs to practitioners. So they'd sell both tinctures and dried herbs. And so you're like, well, if you're using that to make medicines, it just started to raise a few questions around whether we could perhaps do better with using the herbal medicine that I was seeing that my father was producing, because he's it's obviously extremely labor intensive to produce that high level of quality. So you can see how I think the industry sources a range of quality, but they are kind of constrained in a way that we as individuals might not be as constrained when we're sourcing our medicines. So I guess that just sort of started that seed of like, well, what if we actually made our own medicines a bit, as part of what we were doing. The other thing is we'd had this experience in the labs when we were training of making herbal extracts from this material, and so this herbal material that was being bought from the suppliers that were also making tinctures. Making tinctures out of that material as a learning exercise, and then testing. I think we were testing the berberine content, and then we also tested the berberine content in the proprietary extract, and we're like, what? Ours has got more in it. Like, we were really thrown. We were like, wow, we just made this ourselves, and it ended up being stronger in this one measurement, which I guess is that thing of that it's easy for us to think as individuals, that we can't possibly make something as good as a factory can. And I guess that was really blown apart by those kinds of experiences. And then the other component was living on the Northern New South Wales area. There's all these apothecaries here. So we were really fortunate that people like Val and Annette of Mullumbimby Herbals and other places let us do observation time with them, and we just got to experience what amazing community offering the apothecary model is, where you have you just can help people in just so spontaneously. So many people can access you. They can just drop in, and they don't necessarily have to have a big income. They, you can also just recommend something which is a kitchen cupboard medicine if they can't afford to buy anything. The whole sort of everything sort of comes out in the wash generally financially, because there's some people that want to buy lots of things, and some people you can just give them some free advice. So just a beautiful opportunity, I guess, to be able to be in that kind of model of care. So we felt as a group pretty inspired about the idea of combining this concept of growing and making some of our medicines with that apothecary model. And it was just amazing timing that Goulds in Hobart, which has been there since 1881, Roger McLennan, the former owner, who's currently still our landlord and just a incredibly generous and special man, was looking for new people to take on the business, and rather than just dismantling it and selling it to some price line or something like that, like, he really wanted to see it go on. So we're really grateful that he trusted us to be the next custodians. And so we're coming up to that venture being 18. So it kind of feels like we've gone through having a baby, nurturing them through childhood, and now they're like coming up to being an adult. Obviously, the business of Goulds is much longer than us, but our journey with it. So I guess, yeah, it's pretty amazing to work continuously with 4 other people. It is kind of like a marriage, and I feel really, really grateful to have been able to work with that team and all the other people at Goulds who just really come together in a really extraordinary way to create this really collegiate community. So I guess the other thing that grew out of it was that this is a learning environment in itself, and that we're really committed to just keeping that grassroots herbal medicine alive, having, and I think, so many people are doing that all around the globe, but just being another place that's doing that, and a place where people can learn, and also having that contemporary evidence base as well, where we're really from our journey of coming from that BNAT training, where teachers and mentors did such an amazing job of instilling that weave of the tradition and contemporary. We really strive to kind of bring that forward too.
Yeah, beautiful. Yeah, thank you. Thanks so much for sharing that, a little bit of insight into your journey. Goulds has definitely been a big hero in my eyes for many years. I've been kind of watching long distance and had the pleasure of getting to come down there in December last year and got to go to Greg's farm, and I've never seen anything or felt anything like it, and the vitality in the plants growing there and his passion, and then getting to come into the Goulds, pharmacy, and just, all the staff and the energy in there is so special. And the medicines that you're making, like the echinacea, I've never had anything like it. And it's incredible. It's like the most inspiring space that I know of in Australia. It's really been a big role model for me in a lot of ways. So and it was really interesting because I interviewed Jason in in my last episode, and he was talking about how Mullum Herbals had really inspired a lot of that journey. And so I met with Val just the other day, actually, for the first time, from Mullum Herbals, and I got to taste some of his percolations and, some of the medicines there he's making. And and he's, just hearing about the benefits to the community. That over-the-counter model of what you do at Goulds and what Mullum Herbals does is really amazing, providing like affordable healthcare for the community, that can't afford to book in to see a naturopath or a herbalist. And also maybe just for like acute things of like, I just have this thing and I just need to make sure I'm getting good advice, that I'm taking the right medicine for this or doing the right thing. So,
and next week it's probably not going to be relevant anymore. It's happening right now. I just need to walk in somewhere right now.
Not go on a waiting list and, pay all this money for a consultation and all of that for just one kind of simple thing. So, so that's great. I really love what you're doing, and also really respect where you're coming from with the tradition, combining the tradition with the science as well, and I think there's a lot of benefit in that. It's something that we were talking about earlier, about the both worlds kind of coexisting and each having their place. And a lot of people seem to think like they have to choose one or the other, choose the science model or choose tradition, and it's not like that, is it? It's they very much work side by side.
Absolutely. And perhaps you could even consider that and I think many would argue this, that tradition is science, that it's not, we didn't just, think about observing our environment in the last, 40, 50 to 50 years. Like humans have been making observations and understanding the world around them forever. And, we might have like different frameworks for that understanding, but it's, I guess, their ways of knowing. And I think that I would like to see science be kind of an umbrella word, and that we've got, traditional evidence, and some of that's really strong and some of it might be really weak, depends on the thing. You might be like, okay, one reference talks about using that ingredient in a really obscure way, but no one else does, you'd be like, okay, well, that's fairly weak, and maybe I'm not going to wait much on that. Whereas and I think the same with contemporary evidence. Some of it's really crappy. They haven't even bothered to ID the herb. We don't even know if they're talking about the thing they're talking about. And it's so it's the same. We need to just kind of look at the strength of that evidence either way. And I guess the other interesting thing is, like, as the biomedical model is kind of evolving and pushing forward, it's actually starting to become kind of embrace some of the more traditional concept of holism. Like, that's this kind of understanding that, you can't actually just isolate one thing from everything else in a biological system. Like, there's how that individual feels in themselves. So I think the other element to this landscape is that is kind of a circle perhaps happening within science as well.
Yeah.
Within the contemporary science, because I'd like to hold on to this idea that it's all science. Like, you're not unscientific if you value traditional evidence. It doesn't make you unscientific.
Yeah, I like that. Yeah, because science kind of, it's in some ways kind of lost its way, just swinging too far into the allopathic and the isolated things and everything, too kind of pulled apart and narrowing the lens too much onto one isolated thing. And then I like the idea of then now that coming back around full circle. It's kind of like the two hemispheres of the brain coming back together, the more intuitive and the practical, logical, analytical, parts coming together. So I like that. The next thing I'd love to talk with you about is because I know that you're very passionate about providing lactation support and natal support for mothers and for families. And I'd just love to know a bit about what led you to be so passionate in this topic and so driven to help mothers and families with this.
So I guess I've been extremely privileged. Like, I didn't realize how privileged I was until I probably was having my second baby. But I grew up in an environment where birth and breastfeeding were really normal and part of my everyday world, because my stepmother was is a home birth midwife, and I was present for many of my siblings' birth, and there was always kind of normal amounts of breastfeeding happening all around me. Like, a 3-year-old breastfeeding was normal, and I was just amongst that all the time. So, and then I actually was quite a young mother first time around. I had my first baby when I just turned 19, just after she was born. And my family were really extraordinary in that they really just nurtured me and supported me to be able to have a really empowering birth and early parenting experience, which really set me up to have a much happier parenting journey, which, I mean, that was still, obviously it's a big thing being a new mum at that young age, but, just to walk into that with that really empowered experience because of that support. And, of course, you don't always end up having an empowered experience, even if you have good support. But I certainly did. And then, coming around to just finishing my degree, was having my second baby and doing some preparation classes. And the Australian Breastfeeding Association came and gave one of the representatives in the Northern Rivers actually came and just, shared some insights around breastfeeding. And I just realized that, what was just really available to me was not available to most mothers. And so, just kind of an understanding of those barriers that so many families face around successfully breastfeeding, and and realizing that there was certainly a gap in my training around supporting people with that. And then in the early times at Goulds, because of our position, we have a lot of people that would just pop in with breastfeeding concerns. And so it really encouraged a number of us to really upskill in that area, and then realize that it would be wonderful to share that and bring that into naturopathy more. So because we have these opportunities as herbalists and naturopaths all the time with young families, where we can sort of catch something that might not be caught somewhere else. For example, a mum, concerned about her milk supply, like that presentation of being concerned about your milk supply is, it's a common kind of starting point to kind of falling into doing some things that actually jeopardize your milk supply, like thinking you need to space your feeding so your breasts can fill up in between, or feeling so worried because your baby's unsettled, they must be hungry, and topping them up. And obviously there's situations where, a baby does need some additional nourishment, but those kind of traps where you can kind of lose confidence and misread a situation actually send families into a situation of true low milk supplies. And you can be in that position to just try and understand more clearly what's happening, help that family know, okay, what are the ways of really checking to see if my baby's getting enough milk? Are they getting enough milk? Helping them to understand how breasts work, that, if you just extend the space between feeds, you'll actually reduce your supply. Like it might feel like you're giving your breast more time to fill up, and they might feel more full, but actually it's sending the message to your physiology to make less milk. So, help. And that, that is like a really simple piece of information, but it's amazing how many people don't have that. And so if we're in a position where we're upskilled with those kinds of really simple, important bits of information about how breasts work, or normal infant behavior, and how to interpret it, and when to worry and when not to worry, we can just do, I feel, so much. We can be of such good service to families if we're kind of at the point where we're ready. When those things pop up, we can kind of provide that just that little bit of insight at the right time can just have a profound effect on the trajectory of that family's health.
Yeah, great. Yeah, well, thank you for providing that service. So much information doesn't necessarily get passed down from mother to daughter or down generations. A lot of people move away from home before they even have their kids. A lot of people don't have that family support. A lot of information's kind of gotten misplaced along the way. So
yeah, I think that sorry to interrupt, but that's such a good point, because previously we would have been able to go to our grandmothers for this help, but we've had it, basically a couple of generations before, where breastfeeding has just been trashed by the formula industry, and so these strange kind of ideas on feeding, like that kind of, I guess, the 50s area, where you were trying to do the scheduling, and you were like doing all these things that for most women will absolutely, they will not be able to maintain a supply with those. There'd be like a very small percentage where that would work for them, but with most women that will not work. But if you think, that means that those grandmothers who tried to do that will be like, oh, I couldn't make enough milk, so you might not be able to make enough milk. And, just like this fracturing of that lineage that mothers were able to trust and go to is part of the problem. And I guess another reason why we need to be upskilled in this, because this just, those stories that get passed on, where normally it would be like a trusted, good kind of place to go. And that's obviously not going to be the case for every family. Like there are some, there'll be many mothers out there that can go to their mother and get good advice and support. But anyway, got me on my soapbox.
Yeah, no, it's great. It's great that you're passionate about it. It's definitely an area I see a lot of young families just kind of a bit lost and like, we don't really know what we're doing, like trying to work it out. And then there's that shame that can come in when they don't have it all worked out and they're thinking, well, we should just know. And well, not necessarily. It's, we learn that from each other. So yeah, no, it's great that you're doing that, offering that support. Yeah. And then they learn those things and then hopefully they pass it on and we can kind of, fix
Go
the
into
little broken
repair.
ties.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And I mean, I feel that they're definitely better than they were 10 years ago in terms of where the average new mum's knowledge would be at. But you still see those same themes coming up. So, yeah. I mean, and I do love it that it's often pretty simple things to address. So often it's simple things to address, which is makes it really powerful and possible to support change.
Yeah, postpartum care has definitely become so popular, hasn't it, over the last year or two, or maybe a bit longer. It's kind of been becoming steadily more and more popular to have that. They're really valuing and understanding the importance of close care during that time. And support, that the families need, especially in this like modern, the nuclear family model, where it's just kind of mum and dad and kids all just together and dad's off to work or, and mum's home with the kids going like pulling the hair out going, what am I doing? That's kind of where we need extra support in that space when that extra families aren't around or the grandparents are still working.
Absolutely.
Like that.
Yeah. It's more than a one person job.
Yeah.
And it's, I mean, it's, it can just be really isolating to be, it's tough the way, the way it's ended up with that. Yeah. A lot of people just kind of on their own at that time where they would really just benefit from having a nice kind of easy to tap in support, where you didn't have people right there all the time, but you could just easily reconnect, which you could kind of imagine in that more traditional setting that you would, I mean, I'm sure there'd be lots of challenges in potential other models, but yeah, just that thing of having support close by, but not actually right on top of you.
Yeah, wonderful. Thank you for offering that. I just want to kind of change a bit the topic quite dramatically, actually. I wanted to. I haven't actually had the chance to read it yet, but I know that you've done a thesis on herb drug interactions, and I know it's been a very very well cited document, and I'm looking forward to reading it. But yeah, I just want to kind of open up the space for you to share with our listeners, many of which are herbal practitioners and students, about the importance of like knowing herb drug interactions, or maybe some of your takeaways from creating that thesis as well. Anything you feel to share about herb drug interactions?
Sure. Yeah. It was interesting to find myself doing that project because I guess it originally arose because in the early 2000s, we had, all of a sudden the story of St. John's wort being implicated in some transplant rejection events hit the media, and it was hot, and I think I might have been in fourth year at that point. Anyway, it's definitely sparked my interest. I was like, wow, that's, we kind of went through this period where herbs, don't work was the kind of the message of the kind of conventional potential anti-natural medicine message was herbs don't work, to suddenly herbs are dangerous. Look at this. And and so I got interested in quite an academic way, and then as I was doing this project, I'm like, am I just adding more to that kind of fear message? I guess I started to feel like it was potentially, like I guess I started to wonder why I was spending my time doing this project, gathering more evidence that would potentially work against natural medicine, which I obviously loved. I am really committed to us being safe, and so I say that. But and then I realized that actually the reason it was really important for me to do this work is because I could bring the kind of the herbal sensibilities that we know as herbal medicine practitioners to it, so I could with, and it wasn't, I was working with Hans Wilmoth and Stephen Myers. They were my supervisors. So together we ended up writing a systematic review looking at St. John's wort extracts and herb drug interactions, and particularly on this one particular pathway. So very mechanistic, looking at the effect of St. John's wort on CYP3A. But what we found, which was really interesting, was it ended up that the interactions were pretty much exclusively with these high hyperforeign extracts. So we kind of learnt that it was quite extract specific. And I guess the other thing I learnt through this whole journey was how, just the different types of evidence around herb drug interactions, and how when you, as a layperson or even a practitioner, go on a database to find out, just to check whether there's interaction potential with a herb and a drug. Often that kind of the way that evidence has been weighted is, I guess potentially inappropriate, where we might have evidence which is just what happens if you dump a herb on a hepatocyte, what happens with that pathway, or we might have an animal study, or we might have a human study, and like they're all really different types of evidence. And what became clear was that you could not actually predict whether a herb drug interaction would actually happen in a human body by dumping herbs on a hepatocyte cell. Like, it actually is not a reliable way of predicting it. So that just means there's just so much noise out there when you kind of look for evidence. So when the people are putting these databases together, they need to be sorting this type of evidence and going, okay, what's the quality of this evidence? Is it really evidence of a plausible interaction? So that's, I guess, one of the things I learned, and it's that same message of we need herbalists' brain in to help answer these kinds of questions. And the value of us being involved in that kind of research is that we can help, make sure the herb's been properly ID'd, look at the type of extract that's been used, just these kinds of things. And then I think the other thing is, when you're navigating this as just perhaps someone that is just well-informed individual or a practitioner, how do you navigate that landscape? And I think really just a fundamental consideration is, if you're needing to take a pharmaceutical medication, is how, we call it, what's the therapeutic window for that? Like, if we end up with higher levels of that drug in your body, will it be toxic? Like, how bad will that be? How likely is that to be toxic? And the other question is, like, if there was a reduction in the effectiveness of that drug, how serious would that be for you? So if you're looking at taking, anticoagulant because you have a cardiac arrhythmia, and if that anticoagulant doesn't work, you might get a clot. We'd be like, okay, well, that's in the serious category. If you're taking like a statin drug and there's a little bit of a reduction of how much that is in your system, slightly less effective, it's probably not a big deal. But some statin drugs are quite toxic, so you wouldn't want it to go in the other direction. I think because it's actually kind of hard to really have good understanding of, for sure which herbs might interact with medications, I think it's just important to come back to the actual drug and how much impact would be if that drug is changed. And so those are, I guess, those interactions that I'm talking about are interactions where we're influencing how the drug is moved around in the body. We call them pharmacokinetic interactions. And they're the most likely interactions to occur, is how we move that drug around being influenced. So often it's around how we absorb that drug, how much of that drug we absorbed. And probably most interactions mean that we end up with higher levels of the drug in the body. The other type of interaction is like a kind of additive or opposing action on the actual effect of the drug. And I think we tend to think about those much more, as we're like, oh my goodness, I'm on a blood thinner, I better not take ginger because it might be additive. And sure, there can be additive effects, and we do need to be careful about those, especially if we're taking a strong medicine on that's having a particular effect. We don't want to add on to that. But most of the time, herbs will be a lot more gentle on those parameters. So I think the big thing for us to be really making sure we're thinking about is, will this herb affect how the drug is moved around in my body? And that, I think that's the most kind of important clinical part for us to make sure we check. We want to check the other part too, like whether it's going to have an additive or a opposing action, but not to forget about that one.
Yeah, well, it must have been such a journey, just kind of pouring through all the different studies and trying to compile that and make sense of it. I mean, I'm kind of, whenever I see the in vitro studies, I tend to discredit a lot. Like you're saying before, it's like the way that a herb will interact with a isolated cell in a petri dish compared to a rat compared to a human is like, very, very different. And but it is hard to ethically do a lot of studies on humans, and the same in the realm of pregnancy and baby care and things like that, breastfeeding time. It's like ethically it's difficult to be able to do a lot of these studies on humans. So it's convenient and also more ethical to do the petri dish. But it is hard to find good information and know what to trust or who to listen to, and like you say, like what kind of extracts have they used. I see a lot of studies released and they just say that they've just used an extract of a herb, and it's like, what extract? Like, were they using a fresh plant or a dried plant? Or how, when was it harvested? Like, what even part of the plant did you use? Like,
absolutely.
how old is the preparation? Like, there's just a lot that often gets left out, that are all really important variables to consider. So I could only imagine how tricky that would have been for you, trying to pour through all of that and come to some conclusive findings.
It was definitely immersion. That was back in the days when you had, you didn't just kind of, you had a lot of piles of paper basically, because you had to like order the articles. So you had to have all these like stacks of different papers that you would physically read through because they'd come from document supply. So
Wow.
yes, quite different to now, where you just might do a quick internet like database search kind of thing.
PubMed search or something like that.
Yeah. When you do the PubMed search, it's just that you wouldn't be able to access that material electronically. So just remember, like, all the researchers' rooms would just be piles of like stacks of papers with like a heading on top, like a very physical space.
Wow, that's incredible. Well, good on you. I look forward to reading that thesis, actually. It's been on my to-do list for quite a while. So,
I feel like maybe just read the systematic review, because the thesis, I think it's pretty boring. But the nuts, just check out the systematic review.
So, we were just kind of talking about not knowing what form, in a lot of the studies that we read, not knowing what form the medicine's in, and there is quite a lot of mystery in general. Like, it's a topic that you and I were talking about the other day, the process that it takes to make like standardized herbal medicine in tablet and capsule form. And there can be a lot of mystery around that, and a lot of a lot of practitioners don't know, and even lay people don't know what, when they're coming into a health food shop or a pharmacy or herbal medicine shop, they're buying tablets or capsules and maybe not knowing what the herbs gone through to get into that capsule, or
Mm.
what, just what other fillers or things might be present. And yeah, so I know it's a big topic, but I just like to open it up for you to share a bit about your perspectives around tablets and capsules, and yeah, share a bit of information around that.
Sure. Yeah. I mean, I guess if we just if we take like a step back and think about the different options for sourcing medicines, like you could grow it yourself, and then you would know
Mm,
its whole story, or wildcraft it from somewhere that an area that you've monitored well, and you'd know when you'd know when in the season you'd harvested it, and which part you'd taken, and you'd visually be able to look and taste the quality of it as well. And then I guess the next step removed would be sourcing it from someone you know quite well, and
mhm.
knowing their context, and that knowing that farm, or knowing their style of harvesting, and feeling that confidence because you have a direct personal relationship with them. And then you'd still have that those organoleptic ways of assessing that medicine, of like, what does it smell like, what does it taste like, what's the color like. So I remember like looking at, like, I guess coming from Greg's, my dad's herbs, and like looking at the chamomile, where you can see 50 different colors in there, to like looking at a kind of a cruddy old chamomile that you might buy just out of a health food store jar, and be like, it's just kind of become almost one color, like
Yeah, yeah.
and yeah. And so I guess in thinking about, though, with those, we don't have the capacity when we buy something in a tablet to be, okay, what does it smell like, what does it taste like, what does it look like, and also, yeah, I guess thinking about the origin, where did it actually come from. Very unusual for that to be really clearly shared with us on the packet, like, this comes from this. There's a few companies doing it, and I think it's like, it's the way of the future. And if we can see more companies doing that and support them, I think that can just really lift the herbal medicine industry, so that we're kind of a bit, like coffee or chocolate. You're like, how are those people treated that grow that? Where did that actually come from?
Mm,
Yeah. So I guess there's the sourcing of, like, okay, where did that actually come from? And then there's like thinking about, um, and I came across this great quote that a colleague shared with me, from John Uri Lloyd, which sort of talked about how, basically, if you start with crap, it doesn't matter how sophisticated your process is for extracting it, you're never going to make it not crap. Do you know what I mean? Like, so
mhm.
if you've used a really terrible, something that, chamomile that got field dried and wet and dry and like slightly composted, and then, like, if you're using that as your starting material, like, that's always going to be the background of it. You can't take that away, and you would potentially lost constituents that you won't get back, or
Mhm.
lost elements of it. Yeah, but I guess then looking at what's actually written on labels, I think's interesting for us, because when we make a tincture, like a 1 and 2 tincture, where you use like a kilo of herbs and 2 liters of menstruum, um, we're like, we kind of have a bit of a sense of what that concentration is. It's something we're familiar with. If you evaporate that tincture, um, you would end up with a 6 to 1, approximately. I mean, it's going to vary, but it would be something in that realm. So any like supplement you buy, where you so let me just think how to explain this clearly. When you look at the packet, often it will have the weight of the extract,
Mhm.
and then the dry weight equivalent. So that gives you, hopefully it's got those two pieces of information on it, and it should have. If it's got those two pieces of information on it, you can work out how concentrated that extract was by looking at the difference between those two numbers. So, for example, Tebanon, which is the EGB 761 concentrated ginkgo extract, that usually a tablet has got 6 gram dry weight equivalent in it, but that is represented by 120 milligrams of extract. So you can look at that and go, okay, that's a 50-to-1 extract. That's a highly concentrated extract. The only way you could get to that is by doing multiple solvent steps. You couldn't just make a tincture and dry it out, because that would only give you 6-to-1. You have to do a number of steps to get there. So anytime that difference between the weight of the extract and the dry weight equivalent is, more than 6 times, you kind of know that you're going into that territory where there's more than one solvent step. I don't think that makes it wrong, but we just need to know it, I guess, is my feeling. Like with this particular herbal medicine, like ginkgo is an interesting story, because ginkgo, traditionally, my understanding is that we never really use the leaves. There's not a strong tradition for using the leaves, certainly not one that's really well understood. But in the 50s, the Germans did a whole bunch of research and found this incredibly concentrated extract had these particular actions. And so they selected for certain constituents with this sequence of solvent steps, and ended up with that particular extract, which has got particular qualities, which is completely different to if you made a ginkgo leaf tea. So this is one of those situations where I feel like I don't want to give people a ginkgo leaf tea, because I can't draw on a traditional evidence to support that, and I can't possibly think that's going to do the same thing as this 50-to-1 multiple solvent step extract. So that one's an interesting example. But if you think about something like lemon balm, we have a real sense of the tradition of lemon balm, and we have this sense of it sort of like a fairly fragile herb in a way, that it can lose its, the beautiful elements of it can be lost if it's not processed well. That if you were to get a concentrated extract of lemon balm where it's been extracted via multiple solvent steps, things are going to be left out of that extract. And will they be things that matter? I think ultimately we don't know, but I think it's highly likely. I certainly don't feel a trust in a highly concentrated lemon balm extract, because that some of it's been lost, and we have such a good sense of using the really a much more whole plant extract of lemon balm in our traditional kind of application of it. How's that explanation? Do you feel like that's there's some clarification needed for that to make sense?
No, I think it's perfect, and it's a really good example that you made with the Tebanon and then with the Melissa as well. Like when I make a lemon balm tincture, I only ever do like a fresh plant tincture, and I give myself an hour from when I harvest it to getting it into the alcohol. And that's not something I learned from anyone. That's me like observing the plant and seeing what happens to it when it's left on the bench too long. And so especially up in the tropics anyway.
Absolutely.
And so, I get it into the jar, and then I notice even if the jar or the bottle that it gets decanted into is left open too long, it's like she leaves, she's gone out of the bottle. And I've just noticed that like the smell and the flavor and the effect of it will kind of dissipate. So it's definitely the most, out of all the herbs I've worked with, it's the most like volatile, or the most quick to kind of hard to capture and hold in a menstruum or in any kind of form. So yeah, it's a good example. And I didn't know that about the ginkgo. That's interesting what you're saying. But I mean, and it's in general with, there's a lot of, for tablets, there's a lot of like fillers. It seems like it seems like an area that's perhaps not regulated enough. Like I'm sure that the general public would like to know if they're buying an extract that says herbal extract, but it's had all of these chemical solvents used. Like people, I'm sure they would want to know that, if that's a lot of people at least would want to know that, if and if there's any, I don't know if there's any solvents remaining in the
any
end
residues
result.
there.
Like Jason in our interview was talking about citrus seed extract and about the solvents that are required to actually make that. And then the solvent residue that still remains in the end product and all of that. So do you know any other examples like that of where heavy metals are present? Or, we don't need to name certain brands or anything like that, but that goes on, doesn't it? I
Yeah,
find
and
there's
I
not
think, I
enough
guess the other thing is
information.
when you're also, like, if the starting material's origin is a bit, like, there's a potential for contamination in the starting material, and then you're going through a range of concentration steps where you're selecting, concentrating up things in that, through that process of using the different solvents. It could also be that you're concentrating up something that's unfavorable, a contaminant in that. So I think that's, an area that's definitely not well regulated. And I think, I guess, these companies that are buying extracts, they'll often, they'll just be buying like a concentrated extract. They won't be making the extract, they'll be buying it in. So they'll be potentially getting it from China sometimes, or wherever, they're going to just, every company will potentially have different, of course, some of them will have some different standards around what they will and won't include. But you can imagine it'd be very tempting to include these very cheap extracts that make your product look good when you can just put, like, I don't know, 20 milligrams of an extract, and then write on the label 1 gram Melissa or something. and,
Yeah.
and be like, because I think, there is that pressure to have, to kind of market a product that people are going to get excited about based on the list of herbs in it. And if there's a couple more that, they might just be completely token on that list, or that, I guess there's a possibility of them coming with some potential unwanted elements to it as well.
Yeah, some adulterants, or possibly that there's misidentification happening. Like, something that really lost my faith recently is that there's quite a well-known tea range in Australia, and on their ginkgo tea packet, it had a picture of Gotta Cola. So ginkgo had a picture of Centella asiatica, and then on their Gotta Cola one, they had a picture of a hydrocotyle, or whatever they call them, like a totally different genus, not
Yeah.
even Gotta Cola. And I'm like, hang on, so what's actually in the
This is
packet? And then
this is
on the packet, it
unsettling.
didn't even say the botanical name. So I'm left kind of going, wow, it doesn't even say the botanical name. Like, so I don't buy from that brand anymore. And then it just got me kind of wondering. And so, that is where it kind of brings back to what you said originally there, that ideally we're growing it ourselves, or we're sourcing it from somewhere locally, and we can vouch for that person's ability to identify correctly and have good growing practices. It's been harvested at the right time and dried and processed in the right way, and to maintain those vital principles. And so it's
And
we've come really far from that as a nation, as a culture. So I really hope to see that come back around, and seeing a lot more emerging of people, but I'd like to see Australia become more self-sufficient in general with our medicine production. That's something that I really yearn for, is to see us become more, not having to import so much, seeing more farms like Goulds pop up.
yeah.
Yeah.
And there's two thoughts that come to mind when you say those things, and one of them is like how the pandemic was a really interesting time for realizing how supply chains can just fall apart, and just the importance of having medicine security of things that you create, and also, people having things in their kitchen cupboards that they can use, and all the rest. And I guess the other thing is that, we're going to continue to have this herbal medicine industry making, with lots of products, but I would love to see just some more kind of regulation around sourcing, and just around transparency, or more companies opting for that voluntarily, because it has to be independent. Like, it can't be that as a consumer or practitioner, just trust what a company says, is like, which I have observed, because I think we can be we want to be trusting. It's nice to be trusting. And
Mm.
so you want to ask that particular supply, did you get this from an ethical place? And they say yes. And you want to just believe that. But like we know that that's not actually enough once there's a bigger scale, that we do need that independent validation or verification that there has been an ethical sourcing process, and that we that using that medicine isn't going to have a really negative footprint on the planet in terms of environmental or
Mm.
social impact. And I just think it's a really great opportunity for the companies to really lift their game in that area, and for us to support the ones that do, because I think we need to keep the grassroots stuff alive and healthy and intact, and that also gives us the capacity to critique supplements, because when you're making things yourself, you understand, like just how you gave that example of the lemon balm, you understand the nuances of this, and you apply that to anything you might buy. So to kind of keep that understanding sharp, I think we as practitioners need to really confidently know manufacturing and the elements around sourcing. And I think the only way to know that really well is to do a bit of it yourself. Otherwise, it becomes just theoretical. Yeah, that's kind of, I guess there's two parts of like keeping that grassroots alive and realizing how that helps us to kind of keep the industry in check a bit by knowing what we need to ask of them, but also, just hoping for some more ethical practice to kind of emerge that we as consumers can also support.
Yeah. Yeah, that yeah, I hope to see that more practitioners kind of emerging. Like when I was at uni, I had the exact same moment that you said before about like opening the cupboard and being like seeing all the dried herbs and being like, what? It was like a lot of brown, a lot of it lost its color, and it's all there for, it's not having a high turnover like it
Yeah,
would be if it was in
exactly.
a shop or a dispensary or something. It's there so the students can learn to how to work with it, so it's kind of, but it's still, I was like, wow, this is just so not, I'm not really learning the smell and the feel and the, the organoleptic levels with the herbs, because they lost so much of their vitality. So that's where, I really hope to see more like internship type spaces or other kind of manufacturing, like what Pindari used to do, the intensive week-long, I went to one of them years ago, like 10 years ago, to do that week-long immersion into like fresh plant tincture making and just really meeting the plants and getting to make medicine from really fresh vital plants. So you do have a reference point, like you were saying, you've got something to compare, what the feeling and the smell and the taste and everything is of something that's high vibration, high vitality, fresh. And then like what Goulds, what Greg was offering with the internship program there, I think you were a part of that as well, that internship program, which has been a big inspiration for the elder tree, because that's what we want to be creating as an internship program for the university students. And so I really hope to see, I think that's going to be inspiring. Having more of those kind of programs will inspire those up and coming practitioners to bring to know fresh medicine and to be able to bring that into their practices more and be more informed and connected to the plants themselves, and
Have that
understanding
hands-on.
the value of that.
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, I also feel really like concerned that we don't lose that manufacturing element from like the diplomas and degrees. Like I kind of think, I absolutely think that all practitioners should have that, like all herbalists and naturopaths should have a really good grounding in that, and then the opportunity to build on it. But that we just need to have that component really clearly within the education, because it's, I know that sometimes there's this potential idea, oh, you could be an extra unit that you do. afterwards or whatever. But it's so core and fundamental, that we retain that as part of, like, core element of being a practitioner, is knowing how to make medicines, and knowing how, having the basics of plant ID. You may be like a proficient plant ID, but you've got an understanding, and you know where to go and build on that. The pitfalls that might come up with plant ID, in terms of, like, if you're buying something as a powder, it's very much harder to ID that versus a whole, like, a dried flower or even root. You've got much more, it's much more control over the ID process.
Yeah, and even if those practitioners don't go on to want to make their own medicine, they at least have an understanding of the process that it takes to make those medicine. They might even maybe have lower dosage ranges if they understand how much plant matter it takes to make a preparation, and what that whole the labor intensive, how that is. And because it's really easy when we're importing herbs from other countries that have a lesser dollar value, and we can be really kind of a bit over generous with them, unnecessarily giving too much. But then when you actually know what it takes to grow and harvest and make that medicine, you're like, okay, I'm going to go on the lower dosage range, which is probably going to work just as well, will not come in so hard and fast. And
and being, I guess that kind of links to the, like, thinking about which part of plants used. Is it like the root? Like, how is that for the sustainability of harvesting that? Like rhodiola root, classic example. It's like, extremely problematic wild harvesting that herb. Whereas, I don't know, like red clover is probably okay.
Yeah. Yeah, same as like the slippery elm bark. Anything that's a bark, if and is being wild harvested, it's like runs a potential that it's being ring barked, harvested in the wrong way, and that it kills the plant. And they're definitely all considerations that have to happen. And so that's why I think that all needs to be more in the studies. I know that when I was at university, we had a herbal manufacturing like subject and a botany subject, and then just after I left, they put the two together and made it so you only got half as much in the manufacturing and half as much in the botany. And I was reeling, because I was like, hang on, they're two really, like, to me, really fundamental subjects of being a herbalist. So
absolutely.
So that's where I think having other educational spaces to help buffer that and help to just provide more opportunities anyway. And so, that does lead me to something as well that I wanted to ask you, just in general in the education space with like herbal medicine and naturopathy in Australia. Like, what would you like to see there be more of or less of, and what kind of changes would you like to see kind of happen in the years to come?
I mean, I think that's a really big part, what we've just been speaking about, because I think that if we lose within the definition or coding of what a herbalist is and what the education requires, if we lose manufacturing and botany out of that, I feel like this is a terrible loss to the profession and the integrity. So I think it can't be shrunk. It needs to be expanded within that, in the undergrad training. And I guess the other thing that I really, I feel is potentially missing with contemporary education is having like a core group of permanent staff that are there. They're beyond just teaching their one lecture. They're enough to like rub off each other and vision together and really build something more than just people that are like ships in the night, and not necessarily having the same sort of critical mass that you have when you have a permanent group of people working on that project that are regularly connecting and perhaps arguing and discussing things, but just really building more momentum than a few like just casual people that don't even necessarily even meet each other. Like, I think it's quite a different, you don't necessarily get that same building of that, like what the whole the whole course is, to have each member have a really strong sense of how they fit into the whole, I guess. I feel like part of that's just the way education is going generally in this country and in all fields, that there's universities are having, they're moving much more to casual staff. And so that's, I think, a problem in academia generally. But I feel like it's something that I'd love to see, just that more of that solid, this is the team that are involved in this course kind of situation.
Creating a more like cohesive and intimate environment. That makes a lot of sense. Yeah, thanks for sharing that. Well, I think we're getting pretty close to wrapping up, but I'd love to just, if you would share a bit with us about what to be expecting over the next, year or so, if you've got any projects on the burner or dreams or aspirations, or where your journey's taking you to next with your path.
So at the moment I've been sort of trying to consolidate and bring together the work I've been doing in the last sort of 15 years on early life health, and so I'm putting together an early life health course, which will take a bit longer to finish off, but so because I've kind of been teaching and working in that space for 20 years now, and I've accumulated quite a bit of content, which I'm just polishing up and updating, and looking forward to creating a sort of a, rather than just bits and pieces course, like a more of a solid 10-week course, which I'm thinking sometime the first half of next year I'll be launching that.
It's exciting.
Yes, it is. It is very exciting. It's amazing how much things change in terms of like there's a lot of work in updating these days compared to previously. Like when you updated things 10 years ago, you might find there was like 1 or 2 publications on a particular topic, but it's different now. So but I'm loving it. Yeah, thanks.
Wonderful. Well, thank you so much for joining me here today and everything that you've shared, and wishing you all the best with your endeavors.
Thank you, and you too.
Yeah, beautiful. Thank you, Dawn. Thank you so much for listening to the Herbal Education segment of the Elder Tree podcast. Stay tuned every new moon as I interview more wise and inspiring herbal educators and herbal lore keepers from around Australia. If you would like to go deeper with the podcast journey, you can become a member of the Elder Tree Trove on Patreon. Contribute as little as $2 per week to access free content from our interviewees, and also access discount codes and opportunities which are exclusive to our members. You can find us on Patreon by going to www.patreon.com/theeldertree. Other ways that you can assist us in getting our offerings out there to more people in Australia is by subscribing and leaving a review on Apple Podcasts and on the Spotify app. Also, liking, commenting on and sharing our social media posts actually has a really positive impact and helps us to reach further with the message from all of the amazing herbal lore keepers that we interview on this podcast. Thank you so much for your support, and have a most wonderful day.